Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 120. They come bearing gifts. James looked at Mahmoud with a puzzled expression. Mr. Fasim, what are they doing? Before he could reply, Kaya walked over. You don't have to worry, Mr. Tucker, she said. These people are the owners of the shops around this hotel. They are all here to thank you. At the same time, Mahmoud gestured for the shop owners to quiet down. Then he translated for James what they had been saying.
The first one is saying that you are his savior. The second one is referring you as his ideal. And the third guy here wants you to accept his small gift as the token of his gratitude. Yes, they've come to express their gratitude to you, he confirmed.
James was puzzled. Gratitude? For what? Before Mahmoud or Kara could speak, Krista spoke up. Sir, if I'm not mistaken, they are calling you their hero. Hero? Now he was even more confused. Krista, what's going on? She smiled and said, I can only understand the French parts, but this apparently has something to do with you taking care of Sebastian Rocoto and his son last night. Mahmoud confirmed her interpretation.
That's exactly right, he said. Indeed, these shopkeepers have been paying protection fees to the Rocotos and living under their shadow for years. The Rocotos have harassed each and every shopkeeper and vendor in this area for more than a decade now. This morning, everyone heard how you handled them and their men, and even broke the big boss's arm. It's as if you took revenge for them. Thus, they are all grateful to you for your help.
Now James understood. Mr. Fasim, he said, please tell them that I appreciate their kindness, but I can't accept their gifts. He waited for Mahmoud to translate. When he was done, the shop owners didn't disperse. Instead, their pleadings became even more intense. Even though James didn't understand their language, he could see that they seemed to be begging him for something. He looked quizzically at Mahmoud for an explanation. But before the older man could say anything, a young shopkeeper addressed James in broken English. Sir, we know you are very powerful, so we hope you help us more. Sebastian Rocoto and his son steal from us for many years. We hope you can kick them off Blaha Island.
Mahmoud looked at James. Sir, I think they plan to stay here until you agree to help them. Personally, I hope you will too.
Kaya nodded, agreeing with the manager. That was when James realized something. This was all planned by Mahmoud. No wonder he hadn't mentioned anything about the Rocotos last night. He wanted James to help them get rid of the trouble for good and had arranged for all the shop owners to be here this morning to back him up. So even if James wanted to decline, he would eventually have to give in under the persistent persuasion from the people. Seeing James looking at him knowingly, Mahmoud fessed up. Yes, he had arranged everything.
These people in the hotel have now been oppressed by the family a lot, and I think you can help us. Thus, this setup.
James knew he had no choice. He patted the older man's shoulder and said, You are the manager of my hotel. It is my responsibility to protect you. He looked out at the surrounding crowd. Okay, now translate for me, please. Mahmoud nodded respectfully. James cleared his throat and said, Hello, everyone. First of all, I promise that I can help you deal with the Rocotos, but unfortunately, they are not the root of the problem. Even if I chase them off of Blaha Island, who can guarantee there won't be another extortionist to fill the void? He purposely paused for a moment to give the merchants a chance to digest what he had just said. When it seemed to sink in, he continued, The answer to your problem is for all of you to unite against the enemy. That would be the best way to protect yourselves. He asked Kaya to go to the hotel bar and bring him a bundle of swizzle sticks used to mix drinks. When she returned with them, he took one and said, This is a single stirring stick. Look. He easily broke it in two. You see, it's easy to break one stick. Mahmoud translated all of this for the crowd. Then he took the rest of the sticks and said, "Here are many stirring sticks." He tried to break the bundle in his hands, but this time he could not. James raised the unbroken sticks and asked everyone, "So what does this tell us?" It tells us how important it is to be united. When you stand alone, anyone can break you or bring you down easily. But if you are united and help each other in the time of need, then no power in the world can oppress you. If something happens to a single person, everyone must come together to support each other and resist. Only then can we truly solve the root of the problem. After listening to Mahmoud's translation, the gathered shopkeepers understood the point. In the past, everyone had looked out for themselves. They felt that if it had nothing to do with them, it was best to mind their own business. Also, there was the fear in their hearts that if they meddled in a ruckus, even they will be dragged into the same. Thus, they always tried to steer clear when any of the goons used to harass the merchants. But in the end, this head-in-the-sand strategy did no good. Not only did they not obtain freedom from extortion, their weakness encouraged the criminals to victimize them. They grew more bolder by the people's silence, and no one was spared. They saw the wisdom in James's words, and their admiration for him only increased. They gazed at him devoutly. To them, he had become like a savior and their hero. Episode 121, A Gem of a Reward. The scene outside the Macedero Hotel became like a pep rally. A young female shop owner named Anja stepped forward and said that from that day forward, they would all unite and never pay a single cent of protection money again. Everyone raised their fists and shouted in Malagasy. It was a stirring sight, and they wasted no time. With Mahmoud and Anja leading the group, they gathered in the hotel dining room to form an alliance of mutual support. Meanwhile, Kaya brought James, Vanessa, Katie, and Christoph to the presidential suite. Their arms were full of the items the people had brought for James. They insisted he accept them all, so he had no choice. Carrying 2 bags filled with gifts, Vanessa teased James as they walked. "You are such a hero. Why didn't I notice it before?" Katie piled on. "Yes, you are just too outstanding." Even the more serious Krista joined in on the fun. "Ah, this man. He is like an avenging angel from heaven." Before they could lay it on too thick, they arrived at the suite. James stayed in one bedroom while the ladies shared the second room. It was definitely big enough for the 3 of them. Just as James was settling in his room, the system notification sounded in his mind. "The check-in has succeeded. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 100% shares in the Vado Mandri Sapphire Company. The next mission spot, Vado Mandri on the east coast of Madagascar. The hall on the first floor of the Vado Mandri Sapphire Company. Host, please keep your phone available. Within 10 minutes, the relevant personnel will contact you." James threw the items he carried on the bed and quickly closed the door, but he was confused. That's weird. Didn't the system say that the mission spot was to be the front desk of the hotel? Why did it notify me only after I arrived at the suite? Is there a delay or some sort of deviation? Since they'd arrived, he had intentionally tried many places at or near the front desk, but the system didn't tell him that the check-in had succeeded. As soon as he entered the presidential suite, though, the check-in succeeded. Could it be that the mission spot would change too? Just as James had this thought, the system's voice sounded in his mind again. According to the system's judgment, the host was in danger last night, so the mission spot was temporarily adjusted. A prompt has been sent to the host attribute panel. Because the host had yet to be checked in, there was a deviation. In order to compensate the host, the system has gifted a special reward. You have obtained a chance to draw a special skill. Would the host like to draw the reward immediately? James noted that unlike before, the system had apologized to him on its own initiative and had given him a chance to draw a special skill. This was something he hadn't expected, and it pleased him. I will draw it immediately, he said without hesitation. He wasn't a fool. He would take advantage of special rewards whenever the system offered them. The rolling wheel appeared in his mind in an instant. The system is in the lottery. The wheel started to spin rapidly. It stopped after a few seconds. The system sounded again. Congratulations to host for obtaining a special skill. Master level gem appraisal. The skill is currently being distributed. As before, James suddenly felt reams of information rush into his brain. After a short period of discomfort, his head returned to normal. He eagerly began to explore his new skill. According to the information in his mind, the gem appraisal skill he had obtained allowed him to accurately identify the quality, grade, and authenticity of diamonds, rubies, jade, and other gemstones. He'd also received majority ownership of the Vado Mandri Sapphire Company. Was it God's will to acquire such related things? As he reviewed his newfound appraisal ability, James became excited. He really wanted to get to Vado Mandri as soon as possible. When the time came, he would order sapphire necklaces for each of the ladies. After that, they would definitely beg to marry him. Thinking of such a beautiful scene, he couldn't help but laugh foolishly. At that moment, his phone rang, pulling him back to reality. He saw that it was a local number in Madagascar, Vado Mandri specifically. He did not hesitate to pick up. He knew it had to be someone the system had arranged to hand over his next reward. Hello, hello, he answered eagerly. Someone speaking fluent English responded. Hello, is this Mr. James Tucker? It sounded like a young man about his age. Yes, this is James Tucker. May I ask who's calling? Hello, Mr. Tucker. My name is Durham Raharison. I am the son of the chairman of the Vado Mandri Sapphire Company. Thank God I finally got in touch with you. The man sounded slightly desperate. He continued before James could say anything. It's like this. You bought the company my father founded, but you didn't send anyone to take over. When do you plan to come to Vado Mandri? James thought for a moment. In about 2 weeks, he said. I will arrive by boat. We can complete the handover process then. This is my phone number, Durham said politely, sounding relieved. Call me before you come. I will meet you personally at the dock. They concluded the call. Now that everything had been arranged, James finally felt relaxed. It was as if everything had returned to the right path before they'd set off from New York. Sitting on the sofa in the presidential suite, he began to size up the room's furnishings. It wasn't quite on the level of a 5-star hotel in the States, but it definitely wasn't bad. Now that he had thought about it, this hotel was his along with all the other properties the system had bestowed upon him. He could live in his own home virtually anywhere in the world. With nothing else pressing on his agenda, the only thing he could do was enjoy Blaha Island with the 3 beauties. He decided they'd get started that very afternoon. After eating a delicious lunch at the Masodero, James escorted Vanessa, Krista, and Katie outside the hotel. Mahmoud was very considerate. He had arranged for them to have access to a car to get around. This way, they could stop any time they wanted to enjoy the sights and scenery. Mahmoud had to care for his sick wife, so he could not be their guide. They would have to rely on themselves to tour the island. As James drove down the main road of Blaha Island with 3 such beautiful women, he attracted envious gazes from locals and tourists alike. He was becoming used to that sort of attention. They spent the entire day creating unforgettable memories. At 7 o'clock that evening, they arrived at a beautiful beach just before sunset. According to the locals, it was the best place on the island to view humpback whales. Although it was late, there were still many tourists enjoying the cool ocean breeze. James was standing at the edge of the beach when a figure walked towards him and greeted him warmly. Hello, I'm so happy to see you again. Episode 122. Topping up accounts. James took a closer look. It was the film star fanatic from Cape Town. "Hello, Sam Kello," he cried out cheerily. He recalled the man's name from the business card he'd been given. He also recalled from the card that the guy was an executive with a gold mine. He was loaded with money. "What a coincidence," the tourist said. "I didn't expect to see you again. Are you filming on location here?" James smiled and said, "Nope, just enjoying the island like you and everyone else, relishing in the good weather." Sam Kello laughed. He obviously got a kick out of this supposed movie star. He insisted on taking another photo with James under the beautiful sunset. Before he left, Sam Kello reiterated his invitation to visit him in Cape Town any time, then went happily on his way. The beach was beautiful. The glow of the setting sun illuminated the entire surface of the sea, and the waves crashing onto the shore were a lovely delight to witness. James and the women sat on the beach, thoroughly enjoying the scenery and each other's company. All of them radiated a gleaming brightness, and their happy, natural banter made everyone envious. Blaha Island was not big. The entire coastline was only about 40 miles long. For the next few days, James took Vanessa, Katie, and Krista on a tour of the island. It didn't take long to cover the whole thing in their car. They visited the popular attractions and explored the local gems. Vanessa grew fond of a cafe she had discovered, and it quickly became the entire group's favorite place to eat at. Back at the Masodero, nobody had seen or heard from the Rocotos in days. There was no news about them. Every time James walked out of the hotel, the locals greeted him warmly. He had become a hero in their hearts. They adored and respected him a lot. However, James knew that the matter with Sebastian Rocoto and his son Henry was not over yet. There would be another confrontation. The father and son had always been unemployed thugs. Collecting protection fees was their only source of income. They would definitely not let this matter rest. They were definitely planning something. On the morning of their fourth day on the island, James was woken in the presidential suite by noise outside the hotel. He quickly got dressed and went downstairs and into the street. There he found Henry Rocoto and some men facing off with the local merchants. Apparently, Henry had grown some courage and returned to the area to restart their racket. But this time was different. No one was willing to pay. Anja and Mahmoud had organized all the shop owners to resist. Now the two sides confronted each other at the entrance of the Masodero Hotel. James walked out of the hotel with his hands behind his back. "Mahmoud, what's going on?" he asked. When Henry saw James, he suddenly lost his confidence. Even the gang of men behind him looked ready to run away at any moment. They had seen how terrifying he was in a fight. Mahmoud quickly filled James in on everything that happened. Henry looked like he wanted to run away and hide, but he nervously held his ground. He was likely under orders from his father to start bringing in fees again. After Mahmoud finished his narration, James stared at Henry without saying a word. After no more than 10 seconds, the young gangster could no longer bear the murderous look in James's eyes. He knelt on the ground. I was wrong," he said shakily. He could barely breathe. He didn't even have the courage to look up at James. He was overwhelmed with fear and every fiber of his body was affected. James walked up slowly to the cowering man kneeling on the ground. He looked at him with disgust in his eyes. "Take your people and leave," he said. "If you show up here again, I'll break both your arms." His tone was not heavy, but it carried an unquestionable power that intimidated Henry and his goons. They left quickly. All the shop owners began to cheer, celebrating their first victory as a united front. Although it took James' appearance to finally settle the matter, they had received a healthy dose of the power of unity. Watching Henry and his men fleeing in panic, James started to have more thoughts about the situation. He felt that using violence to solve the problem still posed a great risk. It would only intensify the conflict. The Rocotos and their men relied on the protection fees for their livelihood after all, and it would only be a matter of time before someone on his side got hurt. If he were going to take up permanent residence at the hotel, He was confident they could only keep the Rocotos at bay, but he wasn't going to remain on Blaha Island forever. He now wondered if his motivational speech might have done more harm than good. As he returned to the presidential suite, he thought about the dilemma, and then he had an idea. He had to make sure that Sebastian Rocoto, his son, and their crew had another way to make money. It was the only true way to solve the problem once and for all. After thinking about it for a while, James formulated a basic plan in his head. He just needed to wait for an opportunity to implement it. On their 6th day on Blaha Island, James started receiving packages from the mainland. He opened the first one and found a mobile phone card in the latest iPhone that Mitchell had sent from the United States of America. After installing the card, he switched on the phone and logged into his bank account. Then he immediately contacted Mitch, reviewed the profits and interest he'd received, and authorized a transfer of funds to cover various expenses. When they were done, James had $230 million at his disposal.